Hello, everyone. Welcome you all to this episode. Today, we'll be dealing with water and electrolyte balance. And after this, I think from tomorrow, you'll be starting all the other nutrients. That is starting from the macronutrients to the micronutrients, that is vitamins as well as minerals. To start with, I'm going to talk about the water and electrolyte balance, which is very important in human body. So let us start with the water. Now you are aware of the fact that water is absolutely an essential for existence of life. One could probably survive without food for a few weeks, but you can survive only for a few days without water. Next to oxygen, it is water which is required for human survival, and humans doesn't have the capacity to store or probably to spare water, and it has to be quickly replaced when it is lost from the body. So water is an essential component of every cell, and approximately 55 to 70% of human body comprises of water. And water content of the body varies by age as well as sex. An adult man body contains around 60% of water, whereas an adult female contains about 50%. That is, adult males have more lean tissue and less fat, while adult females have more fat and less lean tissue. Now probably lean people have proportionately more water, because muscle tissue has nearly three-fourths of water, and adipose tissue has only 10% water. So water content reduces from infancy to the adulthood. Now we know that chemically water is made up of two molecules of hydrogen and one molecule of oxygen, and the molecular formula is HO2, H2O, sorry, H2O. And water is a simple molecule, and it has surface tension, high heat capacity, and ability to dissolve many substances. So these properties of water is possible because of hydrogen bond between the hydrogen atom of one molecule to an oxygen atom of the other molecule. Now coming to the hemostat. So to achieve a hemostat in the body, maintenance of both water as well as electrolyte balance, that is distribution, and the balance as well as acid base balance is very important. So this control is a function of complex interplay of cellular membranes, forces, specific organ activities, and systemic local hormones action also is involved in maintenance of the electrolyte as well as water balance. Now, coming to the body needs, as I said, it is second to oxygen and electrolytes. I mean, if there is any loss of 10% of body weight, it causes risk, but loss of 20% causes definitely death. Now, electrolytes are also minerals in our body that have an electric charge, both positive or negative charge. They are in our blood, then urine, tissues, and other body fluids also. Now, the fluid and electrolyte balance is a dynamic process that is very important for our life, and it plays a vital role in the hemostats, that is balancing. So, imbalance of may result in many factors and is associated with many illness. So, that is why the maintenance of the water as well as electrolyte balance is very important. Now, as I already told, since water is the largest constituent of the body, and 60% of yeah, 60 to 70% of the total body weight is nothing but made up of water. Let us understand the distribution of water in the body. Now, water inside the body is compartmentized as intracellular and extracellular. So, intracellular is present inside the cells, and extracellular is present outside the cells. Now, the extracellular water is further divided into water in the plasma, that 4%. Then water in the interstitial fluids, that accounts to around 9%, and lymph in the lymphatic muscles up to 7%, and additional minor divisions are in the cerebrospinal fluid or the aqueous humor of the ear also. So metabolically active tissues such as blood, brain, liver, muscles contain more of water than the fat tissue and the bone. So let us start with the each of these compartment. So let us go into the compartment. So before going into this compartment, so all body tissues contain water, but the quantity of water present in different tissues vary. As I said, soft tissue contains around 72%, and the bone contains around 20 to 30%. Now, this I just wanted to show you about the intracellular and the extracellular fluid, how it has been distributed both in male as well as in the female. So as I said, around 50% in the female because of the fat content, and about 60% in male because of the lean body which has been there. So the older males have around, it reduces. So as the age proceeds, so 62%, and in female it will be around 47%. And obese people have got lesser because of their fat body mass, and then in the infants it is highest, that is around 75 to 80%, and this gradually decreases or declines as the age proceeds, that is up to when it comes to the adulthood it is around 60%, as I said. So that is how it has been distributed. And as I said, it is intracellular fluid and the extracellular fluid. In the extracellular, it is interstitial fluid, then transcellular fluid, and the intravascular fluid what we have. So we'll just study about each of these fluids, how it has been divided, and what are the amount it has been in. As I said, plasma, it accounts to 4%, interstitial fluid, it accounts to 9%, and the lymph, it accounts to 7% of the total body fluid. So let us start with each one of it before going into the functions. So I'll just explain how it has been divided. As I said, body fluid consists of two compartments that are present throughout the body. They are the intracellular fluid, that is exists inside the cell and accounts to around 65 to 70% of the total body weight, and extracellular fluid it is outside the cell and accounts to around 35 to 33% of the body weight. And in the extracellular fluid, as I said, plasma fluid is accounting to around 4%, interstitial fluid is accounting for around 9%, and the lymph fluid is around 7%. So in order to understand better, let us, you can calculate even the water distribution in different tissues of a man who is weighing around 70 kgs also. That can also be done. So accordingly, if the man is weighing around 70 kgs, that means we take it as 100%. So total body water will be 49 kgs. That means 70%. Intracellular, it is around 35 kgs, and in term of percentage, it is 50, and extracellular, it is 20%. So same way, the plasma will be around 4%, then interstitial, it is around 9%, and lymph is around 7%. That is how it has been divided when the man is weighing around 70 kgs. Now let us start with the importance of water. So why is water placed as an important component, even though it is not a nutrient, but still we try to give a prominent place in the, or it what are the important or vital role of water that helps us, our body, to maintain or to take care of all the activities in the body. So let us start with one by one. Before starting, I would like to tell that water, we refer it as an universal solvent. So water as an universal solvent because it enables or probably facilitates to dissolve all the food constituents, and it forms a medium for all body fluids performing various functions in the body. So that is why we refer it to as universal solvent, and that is why it plays an important role. Now, what are the important functions that it helps into? So, as an universal solvent, if you just refer to as water as an universal solvent, we have got the lymph and the blood. So, what are these? So that the lymph and the blood, it is made up of water itself, and that circulates the nutrient content or nutrient substances to various tissues. Then we have got secretions like digestive juices is there, then the bile is also there. And when you come to the excretions, it is, we have got perspiration, urination, and fecal matter or the feces is there. Now, apart from this, water also holds the products of the digestion in solution and helps to pass through the intestinal walls into the bloodstream. Now, the blood circulates these nutrients and the oxygen to all the tissues and carries unwanted or waste material, that is nitrogenous waste, and salts back to the kidney, and carbon dioxide to the lungs, from where it has been excreted from the tissues for excretion or elimination. Now, the next very important role of water is it maintains electrolyte balance. Now, water also serves as a solvent for electrolytes and the electrolytes. Now, we know electrolytes are nothing but charged particles which have got both positive as well as negative charge. So, we call it as anion or the cation. So, when salts such as sodium chloride are dissolved in water, they move apart and form a free ions which are positively, that is sodium is positive, and negatively, that is the chlorine is negatively charged particles. In an electrolyte solution, the number of positive charges always equals the number of negative charge, and that is how water maintains an electrolyte balance. Now, another important role of water is it acts as an lubricant. Now, water is a major component of the body fluids. We know that one. So, these fluids serve several essential mechanical functions such as shock absorption, then lubrication, cleansing, and protection. So, if just for an example, synovial fluid, which makes the movement of the joints easier and prevents the friction, or probably minimizes the wear and tear of the cartilage by the lubricating effects. Now, you have got amniotic fluids, provides a gentle cushion that protects the fetus in the uterus. Now, saliva and the mucus lubricants in the mouth enables easy swallowing of the food, and tears, which is there, tear lubricate and cleanse the eyes. So that is how it plays an important. So that means to say it has got a shock absorption role. It acts as a lubricant, it cleanses, and it also protects. So we have got synovial fluid as an example for shock absorption, and joint ease, that is movement of the joints without much of frictions, and minimize the wear and tear of the cartilage, which acts as a lubricant. Then amniotic fluid, it is the protection of the fetus. Saliva and the mucus, it is again lubricant in the mouth and enables to swallow the food easily. And tears in the eyes acts as a lubricant and also cleanses the eyes. Now, coming to the other important function is, this water has got the capacity to regulate the temperature or cooling ability also. Now, any oxidation process, that is, or reactions that is taking place in the body, energy is produced. So, oxidation of energy yielding nutrients, especially carbohydrate, proteins, fats, generate heat. Now, the body temperature also raises due to the exercise we do, then the environmental condition, or probably sometimes even during the illness also. So, the excess heat that has been produced from the body for maintenance of normal health. So, during these circumstances, body's cooling system triggers and blood vessels dilate and begin to sweat. So, moisture evaporates to dry air. So, perspiring is more effective for cooling when humidity is low. So that is how the body temperature will be regulated. Now, this water also acts as a reactant. So, probably without the presence of water, no reaction in the body takes place. So, water aids many chemical reactions in the body as breakdown of maybe complex components, maybe the polysaccharides it can be, or the fats it can be, and the proteins into simpler molecules by splitting itself and producing hydrogen or oxygen, maybe a hydroxyl group, or based on the requirement of the reaction, it helps to reduce or breakdown of the complex components to the simpler substances takes place with the help of water itself. Now, apart from this, water has got the capacity to maintain the pH balance also. So water is essential component of body's mechanism to maintain pH on the probably narrow range necessary for life. So one of the major buffering system involves is the carbonic acid or bicarbonate. So when dissolved carbon dioxide reacts with water, it forms carbonic acid. And this carbonic acid then dissociates to form hydrogen and carboxyl. So the resulting hydrogen helps to increase acidity and thereby lowers the pH that has been formed. Now, apart from this, water provides minerals. So, groundwater, if you take into an account, we get, or it is a source of certain minerals like it can be calcium, it can be copper, it can be magnesium. Then we have got fluorine, which is all dissolved in it, and it gives us good amount of the minerals. But one thing you have to remember here is the quantity of these depends on the sources of water. From where it comes is very important. So that is how it plays an important role. So water is required for digestion of food. Then water is also very essential for absorption of nutrient from the intestinal wall. Water regulates body temperature. Then water acts as lubricant. For example, the saliva that makes, as I said, possible the swallowing of food contains water. Then nutrients are soluble in water and also the cellular waste material. Then water carries nutrients to the cell and removes waste material from the body, lungs, and kidney, intestine, as well as the skin also. Now, coming to the next thing you have to learn is sources of water. Now, sources of water, that is how the body water requirement is met, is nothing but water as such we drink, then water that is contained in the food, and water that is formed by oxidation of foods in the body. So these are the three ways in which the water has been obtained by the body. Now, the oxidation is nothing but the complex components, that is carbohydrate, proteins, and fats, when they metabolize or when they are broken down, they yield energy, and along with energy, water is also evolved. So this is nothing but the water that has been taken into account as the oxidation of that is water resulting on account of oxidation of food. Now, coming to the requirement, the water requirement of a person depends on the environment, temperature, humidity, then age, activity, dietary habits, as well as body fluids also. In hot weather, water requirement is more than in the cold weather. So on a day-to-day basis, if you just take, the requirement of water depends on the combination of thirst, then the food you take into consideration or you consume, as well as the beverage intake at meals, and total water body water status also. Now, in a healthy individual, if you take, water content is controlled primarily by thirst. So the thirst centers are located in the anterior hypothalamus that regulates anti-diuretic hormone. So thirst is stimulated when the plasma osmolarity increases or probably intravascular volume comes down. So the sensation of thirst is a signal to consume water. Now, that is how the water is being controlled. That is, water content in the body is being controlled. And sports people, or probably people who are performing strenuous activities, require more of water than the sedentary workers. And consumption of fatty foods or probably sweet makes us thirsty, since metabolism of these require more water. So that is how water is very important. Now, as I said, sources of water, the performed water is present in the form of as a 2300 milliliter per day. Then metabolic water, that is catabolic breakdown of nutrients that is occurring, as I said, accounts to around 200. So if you add these two, it will be around 2500 ml. So that is how the total body is there. Now, WHO has estimated that under average or normal condition, an adult male of weighing 75 kgs requires around 2.5 liters, and female who is weighing around 58 kgs require around 2.2 liters, and the laborers working in high temperature require up to 4.4 liters per day. That is how the requirement has been estimated. Now, that is the balance which is there. So this depends upon the total. It can be range between 2500 to 2800 in male, and in female it can be 2200 to 2500 ml, depending upon the temperature. So approximately I have given you. So drinking water can be around 1500 ml per day, and water coming from food can be around 1000 then ml, and water from oxidized food oxidation, that is inside the body, physiological water, what we call it as, is around 300 ml. So this can be, that is urine, it can be 1500, via skin around 800 ml in hot zones. Then via lungs, that is the respired air, that is air given out, can have 400 ml of water, and the fecal matter around 100 ml. So totally it is around 2800 ml on both the sides. That is, input as well as output will be balanced. That is how water is balanced in the body, unless and until if there is any problem or issues in the body. Now, imbalance in the water, that is, water depletion may occur. So, when intake of water or probably other fluids is very less, then the requirement, or there is loss of fluid, and it results in a condition called as dehydration. Now, dehydration, is a serious problem that needs immediate attention, and failure of the correct failure to correct this situation may become fatal also, or death may occur also. Now, body gets dehydrated in many ways. So maybe, for example, it can be because of severe vomiting or diarrhea, or maybe due to strenuous exercise or athletics, or while playing games, or maybe in the hot environment, excess perspiration may be there. So due to that also, water loss can be there. Then illness like fever or use of diuretics. So these are some of the issues, or some of the factors that may influence or that may reduce the water content in the body, resulting in dehydration. Now, you also have to remember, if fluid loss exceeds 10% of the body, the problem becomes serious. But deprivation of water progressively may lead to poor absorption of food, then delayed elimination of waste, or it can be elevation of body temperature, because body is a water is a component which helps in maintenance of body temperature, pH, etc. So it has to be elevation in the body temperature, or imbalance in the pH can occur. Then acid base balance and electrolyte balance can be affected, and failure of circulatory system and malfunctioning of the renal system can also result when there is depression of water by around 10% in the body. Now, malfunctioning of the renal system leads to the reduced urine volume, increased loss of electrolytes, change in the specific gravity and concentration of the urine also. So salt level in urine is reduced and serum level of sodium or maybe urea and chlorides also increases. So that is how it is very important to understand the water balance or imbalance or depletion. So further, the intracellular water is used up to compensate this situation, that is when there is depletion. So the water content of the secretions or in the inside the cell also will be utilized. So this results in cellular dehydration as well as vital organs fails to function. So like plasma volume or the blood volume is reduced, which leads to the reduced output and probably leads to cardiac failure also. Or dehydration due to diarrhea has been one of the causes of child morbidity. You do know about it. And oral rehydration solution comprising of solution of sugar and salt is an easy solution for overcoming this situation, that is dehydration. Now, what happens if it continues? So, manifestations of dehydration. So, it can be thirst, it can be weakness, probably loss of weight is there, dryness in the skin is there, then dryness in the tongue, then mucous membrane, tachycardia can also result, then disorientation can be there, and sunken eyes that receded into the orbit also. So edema is one condition which is very important to understand. So it is a condition in which there is excess fluid accumulation in tissues, and this occurs when there is raise in the sodium level in the extracellular fluid. Probably this is due to inability of kidney to excrete sodium. So water is retained with excess sodium, resulting in edema, and edema occurs in some conditions like it can be severe protein deficiency or some nephrotic syndromes, or maybe problems in the liver, that is cirrhosis of liver, or heart problems also. So that is very important. Now the next aspect you have to understand is dehydration. As I said, reduced volume, poor absorption of nutrients, slowing down of the renal function, then circular failures and loss of electrolytes and reduced peristaltic action. So that is the consequences. Now let us understand how it works also. That is water elimination. Now, water loss occurs through kidney in the urine and through digestive tract in the form of fecal matter, and as well as through expired rate from the lungs and water vapor loss through the lungs also. So natural diuretics in the diet like caffeine is there, and the alcohol increases the loss of water. So high altitude if you take, or the low humidity and high temperature can increase insensible fluid loss through the lungs and the sensible fluid loss through the sweat also. When too much of fluid is lost, the concentration of the electrolytes, particularly sodium, increases in the extracellular fluid. So here what happens is the hypothalamus of the brain responds to higher sodium content of blood by certain mechanisms. So let us understand what are the mechanisms over there. So the vasopressin, that is nothing but an antidiuretic hormone. Now this is secreted by the posterior pituitary gland. It increases the reabsorption of water in kidney tubules by increasing the permeability of the distal tubules and collecting ducts of water. So by this way, it helps to retain the water in the body itself. Now, the hypothalamus, which is there, dehydration causes osmoconcentration of plasma, and this in turn stimulate the thirst center in the dorsolateral part of the hypothalamus, producing thirst. I have already explained that, and this provokes the person to drink water, required quantity of water, and thus it helps in maintenance of the water balance. That means to say the antidiuretic hormone or the vasopressin and hypothalamus helps to retain the water or balance the water or maintains the water balance in the body. Now we have solutes also. So total body water and its distribution in different compartments depends largely on the osmotic effects of the solutes that are present in the body fluids. Now sodium ions in the extracellular fluid which is there helps to retain water in those fluids. Remember, sodium ions which is there in the extracellular fluid helps to retain the water in those fluids, and while potassium ions helps to retain sufficient water in the intracellular fluid. So sodium helps outside the cell and potassium helps inside the cell to retain the fluid content over there. Now the plasma proteins exert relatively low osmotic pressure because of their large molecular sizes, but as they do not pass through the capillary walls which are there, they help to retain the water in the blood vessel by their osmotic effects. Now, apart from that, we have got aldosterone, and this hormone is secreted by adrenal cortex. Now, this increases the reabsorption of sodium ions by kidney and thus indirectly increases the reabsorption and retention of water. So, osmo concentration and a fall in the plasma volume stimulate the aldosterone secretion, and the later will increase water retention. Excuse me. By maintaining the normal balance between the sodium and potassium ion in different body fluid compartment, aldosterone helps to maintain a normal distribution of water in the extra as well as intracellular fluid. So that is how the vasopressin or the antidiuretic hormone, hypothalamus, the solutes that are present in the fluid, and the aldosterone that has been excreted in the adrenal cortex will help in the maintenance of not only the sodium and potassium balance inside as well as outside the cell, but also helps in maintaining the water balance in the body. Now, sometimes excess of water intake on water balance will also have an impact. So, if 2 liters, suppose if 2 liters of water are taken, so the water is distributed rapidly throughout the body. Now, kidney responds to the increased water intake after about 15 to 20 minutes. The flow of urine raises from the normal volume of around 50 ml per hour to its peak of 1500 ml. So the extra water is excreted by the kidney within 3 hours, and the excess urine may be almost equivalent to the excess water that has been ingested in temperate climates, and in tropic climate a part of ingested water is lost to the sweat also. That means it depends upon the temperature, that is environmental condition, and based on the environmental condition, the excess amount of water, it will be either eliminated in the form of urine or can be eliminated in the form of perspiration. So that is how the excess water will also be controlled and water balance in the body is maintained. Now coming to the next important thing is, that is how this antidiuretic hormone helps. So I just wanted to recall once again, the amount of water reabsorbed in the renal collecting ducts is proportional to the antidiuretic hormone release. So when the antidiuretic hormone levels are low, most of the water in the collecting duct is not reabsorbed, resulting in large quantity of dilute urine. As I said, if there is high levels of antidiuretic hormone, filtrated water will be reabsorbed, resulting in the lower and concentrated urine itself. So thus antidiuretic secretion is promoted or inhibited by the hypothalamus, and in response to the changes in solute concentration of the extracellular fluid, large changes in the blood volume or blood pressure and the vascular baroreceptors also. Now, as I said, factors affecting the fluid balance, it can be the life factors like the nutrition, then that is type of food you're consuming, then the exercise and stress which is there, Then we have got the physiological conditions like cardiovascular functioning, respiratory, all the systems which are there, how they work, and the trauma which is there. And even in the other conditions like throughout the life span, that is the developmental factors can increase the water balance, that is affect the water balance. And as you come lower, that is higher the age, then the water retention is lower. That is, there'll be as you saw, in infants it is around 85% of the body weight is made up of water. When it comes to the elderly, it will be around 52%, that is, it is in a reduced manner. And clinical factors like surgery or chemotherapy, medications, and other therapies that are going, some clinical illness is there. In such cases also, fluid balance will be affected. So that is how it is very important to understand. Now, coming to the next part of the water, I mean the fluid balance, it is the electrolyte, which is very important. Now, an electrolyte is a substance which dissociates into component like, that is, ion, when it is dissolved. And as I said, there are two types of ions. One is the cation, and the other one is the anion. And the cations can be calcium, sodium, magnesium, and potassium, while they carry the positive charges, and the negative charge, that is anion, and the example is sulfate, chloride, bicarbonates. All these carry the negative electrical charges and accept electrons, and in any solution total cations are equal to total number of anions, and that is how in a healthy condition electrolyte balance has been maintained. So that is what I spoke about just now. So cations positive and anions negative charge particles. So these are the examples. Now, how it has been distributed in the body. Let us understand how it has been distributed in the body. Now, the distribution of the ions are in the extracellular fluid, as we saw. In the extracellular fluid, sodium accounts to around 90%. That is, major cation is nothing but sodium. And in plasma as well as in the tissue fluid, how are the other components, that is electrolytes, which are there, that is calcium and potassium, magnesium, are also present there, but in a smaller quantity. And the anions found in plasma are mainly the chlorides, which but smaller concentration of other things are there, that is bicarbonate, sulfates, and phosphates are also present in the extracellular fluid. Now, apart from that, in the intracellular fluid, we have got potassium as the main. Outside it is sodium, and inside the in the inside the cell, it is the potassium as the main cation found in the intracellular fluid, and the remaining magnesium, sodium is also present in a lower amount. And the coming to the anions, that is negatively charged particles, we have there are certain amount of phosphate and even bicarbonates, chlorides, and sulfates in a negligible or in a smaller amount. So that is just to summarize, extracellular fluid, it is the sodium that that accounts to highest percent, and in the intracellular fluid it is the potassium that accounts to highest, and these two are the major cations that are present in the extracellular as well as intracellular fluid. So next is types of that is electrolytes. Now, why electrolyte is very important? Now, you know, electrolytes balance the amount of water, that is the total water is also mutually balanced by the electrolytes that are present. And I previously told you that sodium and potassium helps in the maintenance of water balance in the extracellular as well as in the intracellular fluid. So the balance of your that is acid base balance or the pH balance is also taken care by the electrolytes. The movement of the nutrients also is being the sodium and potassium may act as a carrier, and it helps in the movement of the nutrients inside or outside the cell, as well as simultaneously the removal of waste materials also in the same manner. And nervous system, muscles and heart and brain also should requires a good amount of electrolytes for their as a stimulant for the working of these sensitive organs. And these electrolytes are got through the food that we consume and the fluids that we drink. So that is why it is very important. Now there are, that is one, I mean, sometimes there may be imbalance in the electrolytes also. So this is referred to as hyper if it is more, and if it is less then what is required, it is called as hyposecretion. So I've just listed few of the things like calcium. I think you'll be learning separately, so I'll not deal with the calcium. So excess of calcium in the body results in hypercalcemia, or lower low amount is referred to as hypocalcemia. Whereas chloride, it is hyperchloremia and hypochloremia. And with magnesium, if it is excess, it is hypermagnesiemia, and hypo is low amount. Phosphate also, we have got hyperphosphatemia and hypophosphatemia, that is lower. And potassium is hyperkalemia, and decreased amount is hypokalemia. And sodium, it is hyponatremia, and the hypernatremia, and lower amount is hyponatremia. So these are the imbalance. I mean, when there is depletion and when there is more amount, it also will have an effect, and these are referred to as the disorders of the electrolyte. Now let us start with each one of these nutrients. So let us start with 1 minute. Just let us start with the sodium. Now, sodium is very important, and this plays an important role. Now, you know, the salt has occupied a unique position in human history, and almost 50% of the body's sodium is present in the extracellular. Around 80% of the total electrolyte, if you just take, is nothing but sodium itself in the extracellular fluid. And 40% is present in the bone, and 10% in the intracellular fluid. Now, this sodium is the principal electrolyte in the extracellular fluid, as I said, that is, it accounts for around 80% for the maintenance of normal osmotic pressure and the water balance, that is, movement of the water along with the other components, like it may be the nutrients or the waste materials, etc. Now, it is the largest component of the extracellular total that is extracellular fluid. And also it helps in the maintenance of base and supplies the alkalinity of the gastrointestinal secretions also. Now, sodium functions mutually with some of the other ions in maintaining the normal irritability of the nerve cells. That is what I told when I was talking about the importance of electrolytes. I said it is very important for normal functioning some of the vital organs, that is nervous system. So for maintaining the normal irritability, that is stimulant, as a stimulant for the nerve cells, this sodium is very important. And the contraction of the muscles also requires the presence of good amount of this sodium, that is positive ion or the cation, and it also helps in regulating the permeability of the cell membrane. Now, the sodium pump maintains the electrolyte differences between the intracellular and the extracellular fluid component. So that is why it is important. So most of the sodium in the diet is in the form of inorganic salts, and particularly sodium chloride. Now, the absorption of sodium from gastrointestinal tract is rapid, and it is complete also, practically complete also. Now, the kidneys regulate the sodium level in the body, And when the intake of sodium is high in the excretion, is likewise high itself. So that means to say the intake is low, then the excretion is also low also. So if the intake of sodium is low, the excretion of sodium is also low, and the losses of sodium in perspiration depends upon the weather, and losses while in the warm weather compared to that of the cold weather. And it is better to consume sodium chloride in moderation and to avoid excess intake. So adequate but safe intake is very important, and probably around 3 to 8 grams per day is sufficient for maintaining the normal functioning, healthy functioning of the vital organs as well as the body requirement also. Now the principal source of this particular sodium is nothing but the natural source, that is sodium, includes sodium chloride that is in the salt. Then it also have sodium is also present in small quantity in the egg white, then meat, poultry, then fish also, and to certain extent vegetables like spinach is there. And most of the fruits and vegetables and cereals and legumes have low amount of sodium. So processed foods like papad and pickle and sausages which are there contribute to the higher intake of sodium. So you have to be very careful while you are choosing the type of food that you consume. So sodium, as I said, if there is a high amount, there is hypernatremia. So it occurs when there is too much of sodium in the body, and abnormally high levels of sodium may be caused probably because of inadequate water consumption, or severe dehydration, or maybe excessive loss of fluids as a result of prolonged vomiting or diarrhea, sweating, or even respiratory illness also. And certain medications also can have an impact on the retention of sodium in the body, that is resulting in abnormality. On the other hand, we have got a low amount of sodium. So this can be again due to excessive fluid loss through the skin or sweating. Then vomiting and diarrhea also can have the impact over there. Then poor nutrition, alcohol consumption, and over dehydration, or some disorders like thyroid, hypothalamic, etc. Liver and heart or kidney failures, and certain medications also can have an impact on the sodium level, and it can lower the sodium level also. So that is why, I mean, that is how it has been maintained. I have just given the sodium, how the etiology or the reasons for so hypernatremia or hyponatremia also. Here again, the repetition is there. Now, some of the high sodium content, as I told, are smoked or cured or salted or canned meat, fish and poultry, then frozen meats which are there, then some canned vegetables, and then fruits also. I mean, to certain extent, certain types of vegetables which are being canned in the bottles or cans, and then salted nuts are there. So these are the foods that are very high in sodium content. So depending upon the situation, you may have to control the sodium content over there. Now coming to the balance of sodium. So sodium imbalance, that is hypertension or high blood pressure, is a sign that may be present because of number of factors, like it can be genetic predisposition, or sometimes obesity, and smoking, stress, and cardiovascular also is there, or renal background, that is pathology, can also be there. So added to above factors, a few lifetime history of high sodium intake can also have an impact on sodium imbalance. So an imbalance of sodium and the potassium ratio is what that is, both, as I said, are equal inside or outside the cell. So if there is any imbalance, that is sodium to potassium ratio can be affected by blood pressure. So this is very important to understand. So when sodium excretion is reduced, water accumulates as extracellular fluid, and this condition, as I have already told you, it is referred to as edema. Now, the acid-base balance can also be disturbed with the imbalance of this sodium. So, cardiac, as I said, and the renal failure are common principal causes of reducing the sodium excretion. So, they can also be sodium retention, especially among people like athletes who will lose significant amount of sodium in these through the sweat itself. So the loss must be replaced. So when the persistent diarrhea is there, sodium is drawn into the gastrointestinal tract, and ultimately extracellular is depleted to its normal sodium content. And when sodium is depleted, it can cause weakness or giddiness or nausea, lethargy, then muscle cramp is there, and severe depletion can result in cardiac failure also. So that is why sodium imbalance should be avoided, and they should maintain sodium balance should be maintained in the body, and especially sodium to potassium balance should be maintained properly. Now coming to the next electrolyte, that is potassium. Now this potassium is also a very important uh, electrolyte which plays an important role in the body. So a total potassium content of the adult body is about around 250 grams. Of this, about 97% is within the tissue cells, with the rest of it is distributed in the extracellular fluid compartment. So I'm just recalling once again, sodium is extracellular and potassium is intracellular, and both are maintained. That is, they are equal. Whatever it is being balanced, but there should be a balance between sodium and potassium level. Now, the potassium is present in all the cells and increases in the proportion of the to the increase in the body's cell mass. So within the cell, the potassium is the principal cation for the maintenance of osmotic pressure, whereas it is sodium in the extracellular. So inside it is the potassium. Inside the cell, it is the potassium which helps to maintain the osmotic pressure as well as the fluid balance, such as sodium in the, as I said, it is the principal cation in the cellular fluid. Now, the potassium is required for enzymatic reaction taking place within the cell also. So, some potassium is bound to phosphate and is required for the conversion of glucose to glycogen, and this potassium is released during the glyconeogenesis, that is TCA cycle will release back the potassium back to the circulation. So the small concentration of the potassium in the extracellular fluid is essential together with the other ions for the transmission of nerve impulse from concentration of the nerve fibers. For the concentration of the nerve fibers, that is from the nerve, it has been the transmission of the nerve impulse for concentration of the nerve fibers. That is how this along with the other ions will play an important role. Now, the potassium is readily absorbed from the gastrointestinal tract, and although digestive juices contain relative large amount of potassium, most of it is absorbed or reabsorbed, and the losses in the feces is very, very small. So, excess potassium is excreted by the kidney potassium, and is widely distributed in the food and that are consumed daily. So that is how the balance is maintained. So the as I said, the function, it helps in the maintenance of blood pressure, normal water balance, muscle contraction, nerve impulses, and the digestion process, that is digestive tract. And the sources of potassium is fruits. Some of the fruits I've just mentioned, and some of the vegetables, whole grains, beans, and nuts are the important food source of potassium. Now again, here again, deficiency, that is imbalance will be there. So deficiency typically occurs when there is water loss, that is fluid loss is there. And common symptoms of potassium deficiency is weakness, then fatigue, muscle cramps, then muscle ache is there, stiffening, tingles and numbness, then palpitation, breathing difficulties are there. So mood change is also sometimes observed due to the potassium deficiency. And we have got a condition as hypocalcemia if it is very low, and kalemia, and hyperkalemia if it is very high. So certain condition can cause, that is kidney disease or overuse of diuretics or excessive sweating, diarrhea and vomiting. Magnesium deficiency and use of antibiotics can result in low level of potassium. And similarly, we have got hyperkalemia, wherein there is excess amount of the potassium content, and this is slightly, I mean, very rare. And potassium supplement, due this can be due to increased potassium supplements. Then again, kidney disease can also have an impact. Prolonged exercise, then use of some drugs, then diuretics, chemotherapies, diabetes, severe burns, etc., can result in hyperkalemia also. So that means to say there should be a balance between the extracellular and intercellular fluid. So that is extracellular and intracellular potassium. So sometimes potassium deficiency as such may not be due to dietary origin also, but there are several conditions, as I said, that is hypokalemia can result in severe malnutrition, chronic alcoholism, anorexia nervosa, weight reduction, and some illness where appetite is lost. And further, any condition that reduces the ability of nutrients for absorption can lead to potassium depletion also. For example, prolonged diarrhea, then as I said again, vomiting and gastric drainage, etc. And losses may also be possible during severe tissue injuries on account of surgery, can be burn, or it can be prolonged fever also. Potassium deficiency is characterized naturally by low plasma levels of potassium, and the symptoms of these deficiency includes nausea, vomiting, listlessness, then muscle weakness, then tachycardia is there. So these things can, and electrocardiogram alteration can also result in the imbalance or deficiency of potassium. And excess of potassium, as I called, that is hyperkalemia, which is a frequent complications we see in the renal failure, in severe dehydration, and in adrenal insufficiency. So this is characterized by the scalp or face, and then tongue and extremities problem, and muscle weakness is there, poor respiration is there, then cardiac problem, change again here also, change in the electrocardiogram is there. And this can be corrected by using low potassium, low protein, and liberal amount of the carbohydrate diet. Now coming to the next one, that is the chloride. Chloride is again a predominant extracellular ion, which is very important. And it is present as an extracellular fluid, but it also occurs to small extent in the red blood cells, and to a lesser degree in the other cells. Now this chloride, it accounts for around 2/3 of the total anions of extracellular fluid, and it is important for the regulation of osmotic pressure, then water balance, as well as acid base balance. Now chloride is the chief anion of gastric juice, and accompanied by the hydrogen ion rather than the sodium ion, so thus providing the acid media for the digestion in the stomach. So for the secretion of gastric juice, chloride is withdrawn from the blood circulation, and changes in the dietary intake will not modify its production. So the chloride from food and also the gastric juice is readily absorbed into the circulation. Now, this chloride, like other ions, is filtered in the glomerulus filtration and selectively reabsorbed from the renal tubules itself. So, excess chloride is readily excreted through sweat or the feces, contain varying amount of chloride, accompanied by potassium as well as sodium also. And most of the chloride intake is from the table salt itself. So, chloride imbalance may result due to severe diarrhea and vomiting, where the chloride is lost. So that is how it is very important. So here again we have got chloride, as I said, very important electrolyte in the blood. It also keeps the fluid balance. Then it is very helpful in maintaining proper blood volume, then blood pressure as well as pH of your body fluids. Now, symptoms, as I said, dehydration can be there, hypertension, cardiovascular dysfunction, edema, weakness, thirst, breathing problem, high blood sugar, and the respiratory alkalosis also can result in abnormalities of the chloride. And many a times we have got that is when there is smaller intake, I mean, or lower level of chloride is there, symptoms are very rare, but dehydration and fluid loss can result in this that is low level of chloride in the body. Then apart from that, we have got high levels also when we use excess amount of chloride, but it is again a rare case which we see. Now, chloride is found as in the common salt, that is table salt, what we say. And apart from that, we have got certain food items also which are rich in, which have got high content of the chloride or amount. So, like it can start with olives and tomatoes, lettuce, etc. Now, how does kidney helps maintain the electrolyte balance? That is very important to understand, because ultimately electrolyte balance should be maintained in the body, so flow along with the fluid. Now, the kidney is the main organ which helps in maintenance of the metabolic balance. Now, the primary function of kidney is to maintain the constant composition of blood and the volume of the blood also. And this can be done by the osmotic pressure. Then it has got the electrolyte and water balance and the acid base balance. By the regulation of the composition of blood and maintaining the hemostasis in the interstitial as well as intracellular fluid compartment of the body, this balance, that is electrolyte balance, is achieved. So the production of urine permits the elimination of excess water, and the solutes such as sodium and chloride and other substance like urea, etc. So that is how it has been maintained. Now, although the sources of water to the body and the losses from the body are in imbalance, in that is they are maintain the balance, the fluid exchanges that takes place can be, with different magnitude or depending upon the external factors, can also be have an impact on their regulation. So, for the digestive process alone, the estimated daily volume of fluid that enters and leaves the gastrointestinal tract is estimated to be like it has to be maintained. So, like we have got water intake from fluid and beverages, like it can go from maybe range from between 1500 to 2000 ml. Then we have got saliva, then we have got gastric juice, then bile juice is there, intestinal juice is there, pancreatic juice are there. So all these constitute to the fluids, and this has to be maintained. Now, the fluid exchanges between the gastrointestinal tract and the blood circulation are variable, and they are so balanced that normally the volume of the blood and the fluids within the tract are in a equilibrium. So the losses in the bowel are about maybe around just 100 to 200 ml, and kidney maintains the balance by reabsorption of water, and hence they are highly efficient conservators of the body water. Now, certain factors are there which affects the electrolyte balance. We have to understand those factors also. The movement of water and the solutes from one compartment to the other can have an impact on the electrolyte balance. Like we have got the to think about the permeability of the membrane of water and other substances, maybe hydrostatic pressures within the capillaries also, some colloids and the osmotic pressure exerted by the larger molecules, maybe proteins or so, then osmotic effect of electrolytes in the fluids, or maybe extracellular and the intracellular fluid. It can be the lymph also which is flowing, then probably the mechanisms of active flow or the competition of certain substances which acts as a carrier to transport materials across the cells, those also will have an impact on the electrolyte balance. And of course the hormones and the nervous controls influence each of these factors. Now we know that water can move in and out of the cells by osmosis. So which is the passage of fluid from the lesser concentrated to the more concentrated side of the membrane. So sodium has little effect on the osmotic pressure between the capillaries, and even in the interstitial fluid, because its concentration in the two fluids are equal. So protein are large molecules, we know that, and they form the colloidal solutions. They cannot pass through the membranes. I have told you about this in the previous this thing, slides itself. So they cannot pass through the membranes, and they exert the colloidal osmotic pressure within the blood vessels. Now the plasma albumin is the principal force that maintains the fluid and the plasma. So when the concentration of plasma albumin is reduced, the osmotic pressure is also reduced and the blood remains in the tissues spaces, and this is how this is referred to as the nutritional edema. Now, the fluid imbalance, that is deficiency of fluid, may cause dehydration, which is due to inadequate maybe intake of water or abnormal loss of water, as I've already told you, or maybe prolonged vomiting, hemorrhage, diarrhea, or perspiration also. So they all lead to reduced or decreased peristaltic action, so reduced blood volume, and then probably poor absorption of nutrients and impairment of the renal function, as well as the circulatory failure also. So loss of fluid is accompanied by electrolyte losses also. So you have to always remember, however, certain conditions are there wherein as I said, heart failure, then cirrhosis of liver, or nephritis, nephrosis, can also have an impact on the retention of water. So there can be imbalance. Now coming to the next thing, that is the imbalance, that is acid-base balance is also very important. And before going to that, I would like to you have to understand what is acid and what is base also. So it is better to understand acid and base first. So an acid, you know, is a substance that gives off or donates protons, and a base is a substance that combines with others or accepts a proton. So the acidity of a fluid is measured by its concentration of hydrogen ion. The greater the concentration of hydrogen ion, the greater is the acidity, and the pH is the designation used to describe the acidity or the alkalinity of the solutions. Now neutrality is equal concentration of hydrogen and hydroxyl ion, and it is designated as pH 7 if you have heard. So alkaline solution has pH between 7 to 14, while acid solutions are designated with less than, that is below pH as below 7. So the pH of blood plasma is maintained within narrow limits, that is between 7.35 to 7.45, which is slightly towards alkaline reaction. So now let us know about an acid-base balances. So it is regulation of hydrogen ion concentration of the body fluids. So normally metabolic process in the body results in the continuous production of acids that must be eliminated. So in one day, equivalent of around 20 to 40 liters of are eliminated by the lungs, and around 50 to 150 ml are excreted by the kidney. So the mechanism of maintaining body neutrality are so essential that the healthy individuals do not need to give any thought whatever so to the nature of his or her diet in so far as acid producing or probably alkaline producing elements are concerned. So however, you have to always remember certain conditions can disturb acid base balance, like we have got acidosis or probably uncontrolled diabetes or fasting for weight reduction. All these things can have impact on acid base balance also. So body will have certain mechanisms to regulate the neutrality, such as dilution in an important defense against the effect of the metabolic acids. So acid-base buffer system are an important mechanism for the regulation of acid-base balance, and the respiratory rate regulates the losses of carbon dioxide and the intake of oxygen. So in 1 minute, how much has been maintained. So that is how the acid-base balance is also maintained. Now, once the acid-base balance of the body can be disturbed due to various reasons, as I said, like such certain conditions are there where there is increased hydrogen ion, or maybe sometimes loss of hydrogen ion can be there. So an increase in base or loss in the base can occur and can have an impact on the acid-base balance. So before any treatment, it is necessary to evaluate the symptoms and to pH and then the carbon dioxide content of the blood plasma, and then cause of the imbalance that is taking place, that is between acid and the base. Now certain conditions are there, like we have got acidosis, which is a condition in which the hydrogen ion concentration is increased, or there is an excessive loss of base. So alkalosis is a condition in which the hydrogen ion concentration is decreased or the base is increased, which changes the concentration of hydrogen ion and the base, and the lungs is increased when there is an increase in hydrogen ion, and the kidney attempts to adjust by excreting more acid urine and conserving base within the system, synthesis of more of ammonia. So when there is increase in the base, the respiration is depressed and hydrogen ions are retained and more bases are excreted by the kidneys. So that is how, when there is acidosis, then it can have an impact on the acid base balance. So to conclude, water is an important nutrient, and sufficient quantity of water needs to be consumed. Kidney, as a simple is the principal organ which regulates water in the body, and water depletion can cause dehydration, and human life is possible only when acid base equilibrium is maintained. So intake of water and output through urine or fecal matter, or even the skin gets balanced in a healthy condition. So let me summarize the whole thing, that is today's episode. So to start with, I started with water. So water is an important component, and people in person cannot live without water even for a few days, and water makes up around for 50 to 70% of the body weight in human body. So it is distributed, that is, we have got intracellular compartment and extracellular compartment. So extracellular, apart from that, in the extracellular we have got the plasma fluids, then interstitial fluids are also there. And water is very important, which has got a vital role in the body, probably, I mean, if I just say a few important things, like it is a medium of all the body fluids, starting from blood, then plasma, etc., then solvent of all the products of digestion, and it acts as a lubricant, protects the organ, vital organ, and acts as a solvent also. Now, water to meet body's need is supplied through water as such, that is through food or beverages, and performed water, that is in foods, and oxidation of water is there. So an adult has a drink, I mean, has to drink a minimum of around 1.5 liters of water per day. Now, coming to the electrolytes, electrolytes are nothing but which are charged particles. Either they can be a positive charge or a negative charge. And sodium and potassium are the main electrolytes in the extracellular fluid and the intracellular fluid, respectively. And they help in the maintenance of normal osmotic pressure as well as the water balance. Now, in addition to various high factors, higher intake of sodium for a long period of time can cause hypertension. And potassium is also required for the maintenance of fluid balance, and kidney plays a great role in regulation, that is mechanism, as well as elimination of excess of water along with the solutes. And acid-base buffer system are an important mechanism for the regulation of acid-base balance. So kidney makes adjustments to keep the body pH within 7.53 to 7.45. And when acid-base balance is disturbed, it can cause acidosis or alkalosis. So variation in the intake of acid producing or alkali producing foods do not result in acidosis or alkalosis. So probably avoid too much of salt, and keep salt intake to a moderate level. And water is the body's universal solvent, and supply it in a adequate quantity. So this completes the small unit of that is coming from the nutrients. So I just wanted to take this, and hope you have understood. Here you need to understand the importance of water as not a nutrient. Even though it is not a nutrient, it is a component which is very essential. And how it maintains the water balance, how water balance is maintained, and how electrolytes are associated with the maintenance of water or the fluid balance in the body is also very important. Now, I hope you have understood today's class, which was very simple and easy. And if you have got any doubts, excuse me, you can yeah, if you have got any doubts, you can just ask. I think there's no questions. If you have got any doubts, definitely you can write to me. Okay. Durani, Mohammed, and Sunita is typing. Let me see. Yeah. Can you advise banana and tender coconut for patients who are undergoing bypass heart surgery? Yes, depending upon the situation, definitely, because potassium is very important. So definitely you can do it. Jaggery doesn't contain, it is not an electrolyte. It doesn't contain the electrolytes over there. Calcium is there, of course. That calcium is again used as a processing, that is cleansing agent in the formation or preparation of jaggery. So the amount of jaggery that is, amount of calcium that is coming from jaggery is a big question. So maybe we don't consider it as an electrolyte.
Madam,
Yeah, so
can you brief once again influence of ADH?
yeah, once again, I'll definitely talk about ADH, antidiuretic hormone. I'll just again show you the slides also. I'll go back to the slides and I'll just explain to you. I think it is
If you
there,
don't
sir.
mind,
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
no problem, sir. I think I'll go back to the slides and I'll explain. I'll explain to you about it. Okay. So,
Yeah.
see, we have got that is antidiuretic hormones playing. Before going to that, I'll just talk about how the manifestation of dehydration or water elimination is there. Okay. So, water elimination occurs through kidneys in the urine. Okay. And through gastrointestinal tract in the form of feces. Okay. So, and also in the form of expired air from the lungs and water vapor through the lungs itself. Now, certain situation like we have got antidiuretic hormone, or we call it as vasosprin, which play an important role. So, when too much of fluid is lost, the concentration of electrolytes also gets impaired. That is, it becomes imbalanced. So, hypothalamus brain responds to the higher sodium content of the blood, and the mechanisms are, that is one important mechanism is through the antidiuretic hormone, that is ADH hormone. So this is secreted by the posterior pituitary gland. Now it increases the reabsorption of water in the kidney tubules by increasing the permeability of the distal tubules and collecting ducts of the water. So by this way, it helps to retain the water in the body. And apart from that, we have got to think about even the hypothalamus also. So dehydration causes osmotic concentration of plasma, and this in turn stimulates thirst. I think I have told you in the previous slide also. So thirst center in the dorsolateral part of the hypothalamus, producing or stimulating, that is to the thirst, that is urge to drink water, and this provokes the person to drink required quantity of water, and that is how it helps to maintain the water balance also. So we have got all the things that we have to consider, whether it is the ADH hormone, then we have got hypothalamus, as well as the solutes that are present, which also plays an important role.
Excess intake of sodium, is it any correlated with the ADH?
Yeah, see, it tries to maintain. See, first of all, excess intake of sodium should be avoided. And if there is excess intake of sodium, definitely it has got a direct effect on the, that is, ADH hormone will take care of it to a certain extent. Definitely.
Okay. And ADH plays a vital role in this
Yes,
process.
yes.
How that filter water will be absorbed when the ADH is high?
See, reabsorption takes place. See, in the glomerular filtration, it tries to absorb water. So, but if it is not absorbed there, it goes to the renal tubule. That is the tubule next after the glomerular filter. Again, reabsorption takes place. So, in the renal collecting tubule, that is, you have got the loop like structure, no, in the kidney. If you just recall the structure of the kidney and the nephrons which is there. So in the renal collecting tubule, we have got a long renal collecting tubule. There it helps to reabsorb the water which might have escaped or which might have not absorbed in the glomerular, that is Bowman's capsule itself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, sir. I think I'll just end the meeting, and any doubts are there, you can just message me through WhatsApp, and then I'll answer to your queries over there. Hope this episode was useful to you. Thank you once again for your kind patience listening. Thank you. So I'm going to end the meeting.
This episode is also very much important from the examination point of view also.
Yes, yes, definitely. You will have a question on water, which is very important, and maybe short questions may be there, wherein you may get on acid-base balance or water balance.
Acid-base balance and water-weight balance. Okay,
yes, definitely.
That is in a chapter 4. Which block, madam? In the
this comes under the minerals. So minor minerals is there. No, I think it is block after. I think it is 4th block or so, if I remember. So block 4, minor nutrients are there. That is minerals are there. Under minerals, you will have all these things. That is water and.
Okay. We'll study on 5 times. We can able to.
Yeah. Tomorrow, Dr. Prabhavati, she'll be handling maybe the carbohydrate, that is macronutrients, carbohydrate, proteins, and fats. So there you'll be able to understand, and followed by, I think, minerals next day she'll be handling. So there I have asked her not to touch with water. So she'll be doing other minerals also. So there she'll be continuing.
If anything is there doubt in these questions, we'll send the WhatsApp, madam.
Definitely. To my personal number, you can send WhatsApp me, and I'll answer to your queries.
It will be very useful to knowledgeable and also the examination point of view also.
Yes. Yes.
Since you are highly in a high depth, you know this. It is very difficult to digest us because you can able to. It is very difficult to digest.
You see, in the textbook, there may be minimum. That is what I'm telling all of you. Textbook, there may be very minimum information may be there. That is why I asked you can go to the Google, go for online textbooks. You have got online textbooks on nutrition, so you can take the nutrition textbooks. So by many Indian authors, and they have written very in a simple and understandable language itself. You can go for those textbooks. Okay, online textbooks. Otherwise, if you're in Mysore, you can definitely come to the university and hire. Take books from our library. Use the library also. So we have got good collections of books over there. And if you can buy Sri Lakshmi's books on nutrition and food science and nutrition textbook, which will give you in detail all the information, whatever you are learning for all the things like starting dietetics. You have got one book of hers, Sri Lakshmi's itself, and then you've got nutrition also, a textbook, and food science also is there, a textbook. So you can buy, purchase those textbooks if you want to have your personal copies also. So it gives a lot of information. So library definitely is open, and macronutrients will be done by from tomorrow onwards by external lecturers. And library will be open between 10 to 5 p.m. So you can come and you can take borrow textbooks also, and you can utilize the library also. Okay. Links to download ebooks. Okay, I'll send you the links also to go for ebooks. Definitely, I'll send you, Sunita, and even any books. I mean, the information on this thing is there. I'll definitely send you. Okay. And these
Okay,
slides will
thank you.
be on the web also. I mean, our website. Shortly, they are going to upload one by one. So they are they are on the process. So definitely, you'll get all the information over there also.
In the web, the slides also will be appearing, is it? That is,
Everything,
these slides.
everything as you see in the class, the same way. I mean, what you're having now, how you're seeing, that is along with my audio, even video will be there with the PPTs. That will also be given. And old question papers, I think MSCs have been uploaded. Probably, maybe next they'll be uploading it. Otherwise, shortly we'll do it, and then we'll see what we can do. Otherwise, we'll give you the photocopy of those things. Okay. And if anyone is in Mysore, can come and come to the department and collect the question paper, so that you can take the photo and then send it to others also.
That is
Okay.
a previous question papers, is it? Previous questions paper.
Yes, previous year question papers.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I end the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.